Today on Cruiseman's Garage, we're installing SoCal Moto Gear's new rectangular fog lights on this 2014 Valkyrie F6C. Now, what's unique about these, not only do you get a great driving light, but it also includes the daytime running lights. Very, very cool, and they're designed to fit the unique shape of the Valkyrie cowl. Let's get started. Let's take a look at what comes in your Goldwing LEDs fog light kit. First, you have two fog lights, one left, one right, two mounting brackets, also one left, one right, an OEM style switch, a wiring harness and a relay, and then a bag of mounting hardware. The tools needed for this job are a 5mm Allen wrench, an 8mm and 10mm socket, a ratchet or a socket driver, a Phillips screwdriver, a Dremel tool with a cutting wheel, and a small flat file. And you'll also need 3 feet of 16-gauge insulated wire. The next step is to remove the front lower cowl. This is the plastic piece that sits in front of your engine. It's right behind the front fender. There are 6 5mm hex bolts that hold this in place. You see the lower one first I showed you, and there's also 4 across the top. Now you can only see 3 of them here because the fender's in the way, but you'll need to remove all of those using a 5mm Allen wrench. There are also 2 plastic push pin rivets that you basically just pull these out using your fingers. They'll just pop right out. Now, as you remove these bolts, make sure you keep note of which ones go where, because there are 2 different sizes. Very important when you go to put this back together. Locate the 2 8mm bolts that hold the plastic guard in place as shown. Use an 8mm socket to remove these 2 bolts and remove the plastic guard. Now you may want to retain these bolts just in case later on you ever decide to remove the fog lights and reinstall the plastic guard on its own. With the cowl removed, you can see the 3 locations that we use to mount the brackets that will be used to eventually mount the fog lights. You'll need to remove the electrical tape that is wrapping the 2 electrical connectors. These are for your driving lights, and you'll find these underneath the cowl. So go ahead and remove that electrical tape now. After you've removed the tape, you can now remove the plastic plug in the end of each of these connectors. Locate the right mounting bracket. It will have an R stamped on the back. You can now install the adjusting screw and spring as shown to the front of the bracket. Use the 2 long machine screws and springs to do this. Install the large flange inserts into the back of the rubber grommets on the mounting bracket as shown. In the mounting hardware, you'll notice there are 2 sizes of M6 flange bolts. The longer bolts are used for the left side, the shorter for the right side. Using one of those shorter flange bolts and a 2mm spacer, go ahead and insert the side mounting bolt and use a 4mm spacer behind it, and then mount it to the front of the bike or front of the engine as shown. And you want to tighten it but not completely tight. Before installing the other 2 shorter flange bolts, go ahead and reposition the plastic guard behind the bracket as shown. When installing on the right side, don't forget to use the shorter of the 2 flange bolts and use the 2mm spacer just behind the head of the bolt. And you can go ahead and insert these and then tighten them down. Now we're ready to install the right side fog lamp. Look for the lamp with the R stamped in the back of the mounting plate. install the smaller flange inserts into the back of the rubber grommets on the rear of the mounting plate. Now you can position the fog light on the mounting bracket. Make sure the slot slips into the area for the adjusting screw and spring. Use 2 of the smaller Phillips machine screws and a flat washer to secure the fog light to the mounting bracket. When installing the screw on the outside corner, you'll have to put the screwdriver at an angle because of the shape of the fog light. Connect the gray electrical connector. The process of installing the left-hand fog lamp is virtually identical to what we did on the right side. For the left side installation, we're going to be using the longer M6 flange bolts and the 20mm and 16mm spacers along with 3 of the 2mm spacers. Here you can clearly see the difference between the 16 and the 20mm spacers. When mounting the left bracket, use 2 of the 16mm spacers behind the 2 outside bolts and the 20mm spacer behind the inside bolt. And now we're ready to install the OEM style switch that comes with the kit. The OEM style switch will replace this small square plug shown on the left side panel. To remove this panel, begin by removing the 5mm bolt at the bottom of the panel. The panel is held in place by a series of clips that you can unsnap and then pull the panel off. Now it will be held in place by a cable. You don't need to remove this cable. Here you can see the back of that plastic plug. There's 2 small Phillips screws that will need to be removed, and then you can pull the plug out as shown. Now we're ready to connect the wiring harness that comes in the kit. The harness will connect to an open connector inside of the large rubber boot on the left side of the bike. Connect the OEM style switch to the other end of the harness. You do have the option of replacing the included relay with a jumper. Now, if you do this, this will allow you to use your driving lights in conjunction with your high beams. Install the OEM style switch in the back of the plastic panel. Then use the 2 small screws we removed earlier to secure the switch into place. Before we connect the DRLs, we need to remove the accessory fuse. To get access, start by removing the pillion. There's 2 5mm bolts at the back, and then remove the 2 5mm bolts that hold the rider's seat in place. With the bolts removed, the seat will simply lift up and out of your way, and then just set it off to the side for now. Underneath the seat, you'll locate the fuse box and the battery on the left side of the bike. The fuse box lid shows the positions of the various fuses in the fuse box. You can remove the lid by depressing the 2 small clips on the ends of the lid. Remove the fuse labeled ACC as shown. The accessory plug is located in front of the fuse box. Coming out of the back of that plug, you'll find a black wire with a green stripe. Now here I've connected a 3-foot piece of 16 gauge wire using one of the PosiTap connectors, and I've tapped into that black wire with a green stripe, which we'll now use to power the DRLs. Now here I have fed the wire underneath the gas tank and underneath the frame down to the left side of the bike. Next, we need to route the yellow and white wires from each fog light to the left side of the bike where we can connect to the power source. There's a small area above the left cylinder and below the left radiator that will work for this purpose. Here you can see the 2 sets of wires coming from the fog lamps, as well as the green power wire that we connected to the accessory terminal. Now here I'm using a cage clamp connector to connect the green power cable to the 2 white wires coming from the fog lamps. But you could use any waterproof connector, or you could even solder the wires together and use Hinkshrike tubing to protect the connection. It should be noted that the yellow wires coming from the fog lamps are not used for a Valkyrie installation, so you should cover these with electrical tape. Now we're ready to bundle up all of the wires that we've connected, put them behind the plastic panel, and then reinstall the panel. The panel snaps back into place, and then you finish by installing the 5mm bolt as shown. Now's a good time to turn your motorcycle on and make sure the lights work correctly. You can also adjust the lights following the instructions in your instruction manual. Once you've tested the lights, make sure they work correctly, we're ready now to modify the front cowl. To remove the cowl inserts, we need to remove these 6 tabs, or actually cut through them. I'm going to use a Dremel tool. It's always good to wear protective eyewear. And I'm going to use a cutting wheel on a Dremel tool to cut through these plastic tabs. And once you cut all of these out, you can then remove the insert. I used a small flat file to smooth out some of the rough edges.